December is a month of significant change across the United States. From massive blizzards to heavy rainstorms to severe weather outbreaks, America gets battered by all kinds of weather throughout the month. As Christmas gets ever closer, what wild weather might we experience in the final month of 2024? Let's find out. Hello and welcome back to another WeatherSphere video. The month of December typically marks the first snowfall in many big cities, including New York, Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., St. Louis, and many more. So far, the start of December has been brutally cold for much of the central and eastern United States, with some areas seeing temps nearly 15 degrees below average for the first 5 days of the month. The cold brought with it an insane lake effect snow event for parts of Ohio, Pennsylvania, and New York, with some areas having seen over 5 feet of snow in just a week's time. The cold air continued into Friday and Saturday, with some areas all the way down to Florida having seen temperatures that are below freezing. The lake effect snow has also continued pumping into the Northeast and Great Lakes, with some areas seeing more than 3 feet of snow this past Wednesday through Saturday morning. Snow will continue to fall across New England until Sunday the 8th, when temperatures will begin to warm ahead of the next storm. Now that we've discussed the past weather, let's get into some forecasts for the upcoming month. Starting with the National Weather Service, they forecast that the West will see above-average temperatures for December, while the East will see below-average temperatures. It's important to remember that this is for the month as a whole. Just because the East looks to be below average for the month on average, that doesn't mean you won't see warm periods, and vice versa for the West. They also forecast that the Western Gulf Coast, Great Lakes, and Northern Rockies should see above-average precip, while the East Coast and especially the Southwest will see below-average precip. Alaska also looks to stay both warmer and wetter than average this month, while much of the central U.S. should come out to around average on both temperatures and precipitation. Taking a closer look, the 6 to 10-day outlook between December 12th and 16th looks to keep much of the country except the Southeast warmer than average, with above-average precipitation in the central U.S. and Northwest and below-average precip in the Southwest and East. This looks to signify a large system moving into the Northwest and another system moving through the Midwest during this time frame, though due to the temps, it would likely be all rain. The 8 to 14-day outlook is nearly identical in the precipitation department, but the above-average temperatures will continue to dominate and expand into mid-month. The areas in the deepest reds won't necessarily see temperatures that are absurdly above average, but you should stay at least slightly warmer than normal throughout the period, which for some areas is still cold enough for snow this time of year. Now, getting into the models, we'll start with the European weekly forecasts, and the time frame can be found on the bottom left. Starting with December 9th through 16th, the model says that most areas of the country should be at or above normal for temperatures, with the exception of parts of the mountainous west and southeast. The warmth looks to be especially present in the northern Rockies and New England, which will melt some of the snowpack. The next week, the warmer-than-average conditions move southward, but moderate as they do so. Parts of the west will still be near average, but now the northern plains also look to stay closer to average, perhaps indicating another cold blast. The last week into the end of the month shows much of the same, with warmth dominating the country, though it looks to expand and strengthen over the western U.S. This could mean that the high-pressure ridge over the western U.S. will re-strengthen and move westward, much like it has the past week. Next, let's look at the CFS weeklies, aka the American model. This model initializes much like the European, with most of the country being warmer than average except some areas in the mountainous west. By the following week, the entire country is above average, especially so in the central and northern states. The warmth basically doesn't move in the next week, and even into early January, the CFS continues to pump out well above average temps across the entire country. In my opinion, these models are overdoing the warmth, and we'll likely see at least a few cold blasts through the rest of the month, one specifically toward the end of next week. Next, we have the Canadian model. In my opinion, this is probably the closest to what the monthly anomalies will look like, though the cooler-than-average areas may be slightly overdone. Overall, cooler than average in the east and warmer than average in the west looks very likely for at least the early part of December, though the east will also warm up later. Precipitation-wise, the Canadian is very bullish on giving a dry month to the entire country, though this model tends to underperform storm systems. Lastly, for models, the North American still shows warmer than average conditions across the country, though the west coast could be closer to average in this scenario. However, this model is likely inaccurate, as this run initiated nearly a month ago and does not include any recent data like many others. Finally, let's get into my forecasts for this month. Starting off with temperature anomalies, much of the western U.S. will be warmer than average for December, especially so in the southwest, where monthly anomalies could be more than 5 degrees above the average. Many areas in the central and southern U.S. will average out near normal for the month after experiencing multiple cold air blasts and warm-ups. This is especially true for the southeast, where you went from warmth to extreme cold at the end of November and start of December, and you'll return to warmth before possibly another cooldown mid-month. The northern plains, mid-south, Ohio Valley, Great Lakes, mid-Atlantic, and Northeast all look to be below average for the month, especially so in the Great Lakes and mid-Atlantic. This is somewhat misleading though, as these areas will warm up in the coming days and weeks, but for the month as a whole, I expect you to be cooler than average. The heavy snowpack that's built up across New England should also help keep you slightly cooler than areas without it, though you will still warm up all the same. Moving to precipitation, I have a hard time buying the idea that December will be a dry month across the entire US like the models had shown. I do believe that the Southwest will unfortunately continue to be dry and warmer than normal, and Florida could miss out on a lot of heavy rain events, but much of the Northwest, Central, and Eastern US looks to be near or above average when it comes to rain and snow this month. Warmer weather tends to bring with it rainfall, and that looks to be the case as we head into mid-month. At least 1 or 2 major storms look to rock the Northwest, which I believe will lead to well above average precipitation, even though you haven't seen much yet this month. Like I stated earlier, the Southwest and Central states look to be drier than average throughout the month, with most storm systems going to your north or not developing until they get east of you. This, of course, implies that the eastern states would see above average precip, which I expect will happen, though the immediate coastal areas may miss out on the rain with the first few systems. I'd like to point out that the operational model runs do support my forecast a lot more than the weekly and monthly forecasts do, which is part of the reason I made the maps the way I did. Next, let's move to snowfall anomaly probabilities. Like I said during the precipitation map, the Northwest will get battered once again by heavy rain and snow during mid-month, which will likely lead to above-average snowfall across much of the Cascades and Northern Rockies. It is yet to be seen how far south into the Sierra this snow could make it, though, so I'm not as confident the further south into the mountains you get. Many areas in the Southwest will struggle to see any precipitation at all over the next few weeks, meaning below-average snowfall is likely here. The same won't be true for the Great Lakes and New England, where snowfall is practically guaranteed to be above average for December, especially in the areas that got hammered by lake effect. These areas will likely see a lack of significant snowfall for a week or so mid-month, but could return to some snow later on. Now, unfortunately for our snow lovers in southern New England, the Mid-Atlantic, the Ohio Valley, and the Plains, you will likely see below-average snowfall this month, or in many cases, none at all. The earlier cold blasts just didn't bring very much snowfall to areas outside of the mountains and Great Lakes, and with a warmer pattern building in next week, your chances of any significant snowfall this month will have to wait till Christmas or after, and our modeling is simply not accurate enough to predict that far out. The pattern looks to be more favorable as we head into January in these areas, but only time will tell. Finally, here is my prediction map for the month of December. Starting off in the Northwest, your early month will be fairly uneventful, but towards the middle and latter parts, you'll likely see multiple heavy rain and snow events. This will especially be true in the northern Cascades and northern Rockies, but unfortunately, the same cannot be said for areas just east of here in the northern plains. Many places here just barely missed out on the cold blast early in the month, and the areas that did get cold didn't see much if any snowfall. Your temperatures only look to continue to stay above average, though for many areas here, even 5 degrees above normal is cold enough to see snow, but no major storm systems look to come through the area. The same can be said for the southwestern states, where you were largely unaffected by the latest Arctic blast. This area will continue to stay warm and dry over the next few weeks, and any drought conditions will persist and worsen. The southeast, with possibly the exception of Florida, will see multiple rain and storm events over the next month, with potentially even some strong or severe storms in the second week of the month. Some places in the deep south have already seen heavy rain this month, and multiple more storm systems will push through the area. The northeastern quarter of the U.S. will see the Arctic cold start to moderate and be replaced by warmth as we head later into the month. Temperatures here should still be below average for the month as a whole, but only one more shorter cold blast looks likely for the foreseeable future. The Great Lakes and mountainous areas have already seen a good bit of snowfall this month, especially in the lake effect bands that have persisted across Michigan, New York, and extreme northern Pennsylvania and Ohio. Temperatures here will also warm later in the month, but many areas in the dark blue and especially the purple have already seen their average monthly snowfall just a week into December. Chances for snow here will dwindle in the coming days, but a few storms are still possible. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed, please leave a like and subscribe, and comment down below any feedback you have. I should have my final winter forecast out before the winter solstice, so look forward to it. Thanks once again, and have a wonderful day.